Welcome back to the left versus the right. Representing the right, MAGA, and all things good and conservative, me, Greg Kelly. Representing the wackos, and I'm just kidding, Governor, but you're fine. But some of the people in your party, oh boy. Former Governor David Patterson, it is great to see you. Governor, I think here is actually, I shouldn't do this, but something else we could possibly agree on. The media in America, the dominant media, the legacy media, are scum. That's the word I'm going to use. You can, I don't know, that's probably a slightly vulgar, but yeah, I'm going to stay with it.
Well, it is clear that the media goes outside of the boundaries that they even have set for themselves at times. I'm sure whenever you are in any kind of office, you become victimized by it, and that kind of thing. I remember the one temper tantrum I had in public. The one was when they said that I took my 16-year-old daughter to a nightclub. Now, upon further research, I took my daughter to an event that was in that facility that had been paid for by HBO because they were looking for young people to become interns or going into advertising and that kind of thing. And my daughter was 22. And so I really lost it, and I had this talk with myself that I'll never let that happen again. And I think it's been about 15 years. I've still got my streak going, but the thing is,
What, you'll never let what happen again? Losing your temper?
Losing my temper over that kind of thing.
Where did you lose your temper? I mean, that, by the way, if you're going to lose your temper, that you're totally justified. What a gross misrepresentation of what happened. I mean, that's crazy what they did. Who wrote the story?
I lost my temper on New York One. The story was in the Post, but then even they ridiculed me for I don't even know what, when that would have been a natural reaction of any parent in a situation where the facts were completely were not accurate in that article.
You're like, that's the way you should react. Harry Truman, remember he wanted to punch that guy in the nose. He ripped his daughter, said she was a bad piano player or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to be a human being. And I think Trump, quite frankly, has changed the game. And you can be. And this is what people value. We value a lot more than authenticity, but authenticity is a key component. And too many politicians for too long have been what they think they're supposed to be as opposed to what they are.
I had an encounter with the former president a couple of months ago.
Which one?
Donald Trump.
The former president. Well, he's president now.
That's right. He was former president at the time. But he was president-elect at the time. And he comes to the Alfred E. Smith dinner. And this is when he makes the statement to Adams that he thinks what they've done to Adams is pennies next to what they've done to him. But it's like 8 or 9 of us standing around. And I always thought that I knew how to get his attention because I've known him so long. So I walked past him. I said, Mr. President, I had this staff member that you couldn't stand, and I really wish I'd listened to you. He jumps up. Who was it? Who was it? So I tell him who it was, and he says, that guy, every time we had a business deal on the table, he tried to kill it, and he's carrying on. And I'm telling him that the same guy was mad at me over something and tried to hire a lobbyist. How do you hire a lobbyist to lobby the governor when you work for the governor? And so, we're both kind of going like this. And all of a sudden, the president puts his arm around me and he says, no, there's no problem here. We're talking about an old friend. It's an old friend of ours we miss. He's quick and he reads situations and he reacts to them. And like most people who react quickly, you're going to make mistakes. Things are going to blow up on you. But he has an incredible understanding of people. And if you're going to be on the other side of him, and on a lot of issues, I am on the other side of him, but you've got to give him that respect, or you'll never really be able to have your point of view heard clearly, because he's just that quick.
He had a great story that night. He gave a speech, which is kind of customary at the Al Smith dinner. And he goes, I hear there's a group called Men for Harris. And to be honest, I am not worried because all of their wives and girlfriends are voting for me. Voting for Trump. And now, wait, I don't understand. Okay, so this guy, Trump doesn't like him. You don't like him. And then he throws his arms around you saying, but no, this guy's a friend. I don't understand. Why was that transition? Why did they go?
The media saw both of us with our hands, talking to each other.
Oh, like you guys were fighting.
Yes, and he's trying to tell them, no, we're not fighting.
Oh, yeah.
So he puts his arm around me. He says, oh, no, we're talking about an old friend. Now, we both couldn't stand the guy, but the important part was we weren't fighting with each other. And he didn't want them to think that. And as soon as he did it, they went for it like nothing was ever written about it or anything like that.
Fascinating.
He's brilliant that way.
That was a great night. And, folks, you can see it. Donald Trump, Al Smith dinner, 2024.
Right.
He was good at 2016 or 2016 and 2020. He did one there, but that was shorter because of COVID. Let me ask you something about, I want to go back to the media for a second. Here's where I find them, well, they're awful in every respect, but they're little known fact, they're incredibly lazy. They don't do the work. They don't.
No.
I know you know this, but not everybody knows this.
Greg, I can't believe you'd say a thing like that.
Here's
about our friends.
One of my
third
favorite
estate.
What? In the what estate is it again? The fourth estate.
The fourth estate, right?
I feel. Do you remember when Joe Biden was caught with classified documents in his house, and they appointed that special counsel to look into it, Robert Hur?
Right.
So Robert Hur writes a big report, and the headline for the media is Joe Biden couldn't remember while he was being questioned the date of Hunter Biden's funeral or what year he died or something like that. And Joe at the press conference or at the availability got very angry. How could he put that in the story? And that was the story.
Yeah.
Right? Joe getting angry. Now, if you actually read the report, because Joe said thereafter, well, I made a mistake. I didn't make sure my staff should have been more careful with my documents. They shouldn't have sent them to my house. And his lawyer, Bob Bauer, said the same thing on one of the big national Sunday shows, Face the Nation. Well, if you read the report, it actually says in the middle of the report, well, deep into the report, 200 pages in, that Joe Biden was observed by witnesses, staff at the Naval Observatory, the vice president's, residence, packing boxes by himself and loading those boxes by himself onto the moving truck. And they actually have a receipt from the moving van company that says
they took the material to where it ended up.
Yeah, they're saying that
they took the boxes.
That he actually packed the boxes himself and put those boxes on the moving van himself as vice president of the United States. It's in the report. The only people who know this right now is anybody watching this conversation, you, people who have possibly listened to my radio show or seen me on TV, because I made this point. Robert Hur underwent like 5 hours of questioning on Capitol Hill. Nobody read the report, even on the Republican side. This is the most fabulous piece of information in the whole damn thing, right?
Yeah.
They caught him. And he gets away with it. Or the media, well, my point is the media didn't bother to read it. They're too lazy. They're too quick. There's a headline. Let's go with that. The rest of it takes too much work. It's much more fun to be on Twitter screwing around, insulting people. Isn't that incredible? I find that. And there are plenty of other examples, but that's the one that just really, for whatever reason, and I'm sure you've been in the middle of stories.
Well, I've been in situations where I realize I've got to stop and explain what I'm talking about to the media, because there's some of them who do a lot of work, and with them, you can speak freely, but they're there to ask you about one question that the answer could make you look bad. And no matter what else you say, that's going to be the lead. And that's what always annoyed me.
And
and the research into whether these things were true or not was, and nobody seemed to even want to do it.
Let me ask you something else about a major issue, and it's shocking that it is a major issue. I mean, it's so bizarre and just kind of would have been unthinkable 20 years ago, but this fixation on trans, right? Trans women, which are biological men, and that they be allowed to participate in women's sports. Now, the Democrat Party right now, if you take a position against that, you could be expelled from the party. You could be in significant trouble. Seth Moulton, a congressman from Massachusetts, also a guy I have very little respect for, basically came out and said, maybe this is something we should rethink, and they were protesting in front of his office. This is insanity in my book. I mean, absolute insanity, and it's also depraved and perverted. But this has become, it just shows you how far the world has fallen. There's something, you're a traditional guy in many respects. I'm sure that this has kind of shocked you, hasn't it?
I grew up with two uncles who I realized later were gay friends of my parents. One of them had grown up as my father's best friend. So I was always very, I think, it was easier for me to relate and to sympathize with people.
Governor, excuse me, though. Wait a second. Gay uncles, right? We're talking about...
No, I'm getting there.
Okay.
I'm getting there.
All right, because that situation that you just summarized, I knew gay people growing up.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not...
And
we're not talking about that. We're talking about something radically...
But let's take the issue of sports. You would never have a Little League team of 12-year-olds play another Little League team all of 16-year-olds. You would never do that. They're older, they're bigger, they're faster, they're stronger. So in the situation where you have a trans athlete competing with a woman, women are just not built to withstand the punishment. How about the woman that was hit in the head with the volleyball that President Trump showed the other night?
Peyton McNabb.
Peyton
Amazing
McNabb.
story. Yeah.
And she's barely able to function even now, but went through a lot.
Hey, by the way, doesn't Peyton McNabb sound like a football player?
Yeah.
I just, every time, it does not sound like she's a beautiful girl, and I've heard women named Peyton, but I have a hard time with that name. I got to really concentrate and say it.
Well, you're halfway to Peyton Manning, so
I guess that's it.
That must be it. But I'll say that what's kind of disturbing about it is you would not want to put athletes in a situation where they come to whatever the game it is overmatched. You don't do that. And I think that pushing for that is changing things to such an extent that it's making the whole after-school activities and sports and fun as kids, it's now become a whole political situation. By the way, I have to tell you something, Greg. Friday, I went to the Irish-American luncheon out in Long Island. They have it every year. And Bruce Blakeman is the county executive of Nassau, and he's a friend of mine. But he got up and he said, he's talking all these things about Nassau, and he says, and one thing you know about Nassau, the boys play with the boys, and the girls play with the girls. And everybody cheered. So when he came off the stage, I walked up and I said, Bruce, I didn't know that many people in Nassau County were gay.
He's got you there, Bruce. That line was iffy. That's an iffy line.
Right.
All right, let's talk a little bit about. But it is amazing we are where we are with that issue. That it's it's even debated. It's insane to me, and so I'm wondering, I still wonder where it came from. I have theories about once gay marriage became a thing, what do you campaign for? What do you raise money on? And then the trans got involved, and then LGBT, and the LGBs, by the way, don't like the T's all that much, and a lot of this radical agenda, not all T's are like that. I happen to like Caitlyn Jenner a lot, formerly Bruce, because Caitlyn is all about, hey, I was 55 years old when I made this decision. I'm not pushing it, and it shouldn't be pushed on children.
Right.
So there's that. One other thing, Maud Marin complained about the drag queens in public school, Drag Time Story Hour, which is publicly funded, and they essentially accused her of a hate crime and tried to kick her off the New York City equivalent of the PTA. And that's when I realized, my God, this is an insane moment. Sanity is on the upswing right now, but there's a lot of weird things going on, and I don't know how we got here. Really don't.
It's really kind of surprising because I thought once the Supreme Court ruled on marriage and there were states that were passing it and that kind of thing. I just thought everybody was going to live in civilly and respectfully of each other. But it seems that there's a more dramatic issue that occurs every week that you never thought could happen before. And I think with me, it's particularly the issues where there's a potential harm involved. And that's why the issue of high school and college sports and athletics is the most dangerous place unless it's an even playing field. Now, we always said we want an even playing field about a lot of issues, but this would be one that, that woman could have been killed in that situation.
You know,
and you know what?
Well,
somebody is going to get killed that way.
It's amazing. Governor Patterson, you're supposed to be from the left. It sounds like you're from the common sense middle. I love it.
Well, even on the left, you're allowed a day off.
Oh, I see. Hey, we'll be right back with From the Left and Right on 77 WABC. This is the left versus the right on 77 WABC. For the right, for the conservatives, for MAGA, it's me, Greg Kelly. For the left, for the liberals, for the people who did not stand up for that sweet little boy the other night at the State of the Union, we have Governor Patterson, former Governor Patterson, who I know and love, and so do you. Governor, I will be needling you and your side, and you'll be doing the same to me, but it's great to see you. How are you?
It's great to see you, but I have to immediately repudiate. I thought it was ghastly and horrifying.
Yes.
That little boy, particularly after what he went through, and they bring him out, and look, you know, we all know that it's a sense of trying to garner the feelings of people, and there's really nothing wrong with that as long as the story is legitimate, and his story was legitimate. So I don't know how some of the people who treated him that way could sleep with themselves.
Yeah, it really was something. I'm glad to hear you say that. It was like a bizarro world, and they would not stand up for anything for the woman whose daughter was indoctrinated by trans radical activists, and they didn't tell the parents that they were trying to change the gender of the child, and they were so mean and ugly about it. The Democrats, they've got a big problem on their hands, don't they? They don't know what to stand for, what to do next.
You know, I've always thought that in these types of situations where you're in the party that lost, and the other party is dancing and, shutting down, certain agencies in the government and doing a number of things that are garnering some positive publicity. Sometimes what you have to do in those situations, just be gracious about it and wait. Sooner or later, something always comes up, no matter which party we're in, that is embarrassing basically for the whole party, and then that's your chance to articulate your feelings. But interrupting the president of the United States when he's trying to speak, like the man with the cane, what was his name, Al Green, it really makes us all look like we never got any training in school about etiquette and decorum.
And beyond that, I mean, like you say, like just smarts, politics even. They're bad at politics, it seems. Look, this is the left versus the right, though. We got to disagree on something here. So I heard you say something nice about Andrew Cuomo the other day. In my book, Andrew Cuomo is a narcissistic, psychopathic, crazy person. And the idea that, yeah, he could be a decent mayor. Does anybody remember what the hell happened not that long ago? Bad guy, doesn't deserve to be the mayor. What do you think?
Well, I think that Andrew Cuomo, he released this video, and in the video he said, I made mistakes, but I feel I've learned from them. Now,
what about us? What about the people who suffered from his mistakes?
Yes.
And by the way,
yes.
Did you watch that whole video? It was 17 minutes long. 17. It shows a little bit how out of touch he is. You don't do 17-minute videos where you say nothing for most of it.
Well, that's kind of, I mean, I've known Andrew a long time, and he tends to be long when he should be short. I'd put it that way. And what bothered me is when he makes a statement, we've all made mistakes. We all feel we've learned from mistakes. But as the head of government, what were the mistakes that you would candidly admit you'd like to correct in the next term? And by him saying that, it was leading you to believe that that was a throwaway line. You know, I mean, everything he said, we've all done that. But, you know, sometimes
We're leading you to believe that it was significant when it actually, without the specificity, is a throwaway line.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, when I first got in office, and I had made some mistakes before I got there, I thought the best thing to do was just get up and talk about them and to take responsibility for it. And
I wish we knew each other back then, because I don't think that you had to do that. You were a little bit too much information.
well, yeah, I think you're right about that. So I'll check with you the next time.
Please, please, please. Well, it's fascinating. Look, there are certain mistakes. Let's say he was referring to bail reform, which he wasn't. Oh, by the way, because he specified later what he was talking about. There's no forgiveness of that, because the consequences are too dire. And, you know, you can get forgiveness from God, or I could personally forgive you, but he hasn't even asked for forgiveness. I don't know. The guy blows with the wind. The wind was hard left that time. He went hard left. Now it doesn't even matter which way the wind is blowing. He thinks as a Cuomo, he's going to get it. And the polls indicate he might be right, but I don't think he is.
I think that Mayor Adams is seriously compromised. He is, playing out the schedule. You know, like a.
Do you know him?
Yes.
Is he dumb or what?
He is very thoughtful. He's very spiritual, and he, I think, at certain times has missed opportunities where he kind of eschews that for some kind of, it's almost like he's lecturing everyone. And, it hasn't been particularly effective.
Well, I think he's incompetent in every respect. Bad at politics, bad at governing. And, you look at his career, show me the money. I mean, showing up like that, that's how it's depressing to me. This great city has turned to such lowlifes, and potentially another lowlife. Adams, de Blasio, I have no regard for, and now Cuomo. I really hope and pray this doesn't happen. I'm going to do everything I can, which isn't much. But look, we got to disagree, and I think we might have some disagreements. I personally think that Elon Musk is a hero. I love what he's doing. I think he's incredibly talented. You know, usually around a president, you have a lot of mediocre people. You have grifters. You have the same people who helped you campaign, help you govern. Unfortunately, they're not really equipped to govern, but that's what you get. I think Elon Musk transcends all of that, and I trust him, and I like him, and I think he's doing amazing work.
Greg, you're going to be very disappointed.
You concur?
What I would say is that I went to Columbia University.
Undergrad or?
Undergrad. And by the way, just yesterday, President Trump announced that he is removing $400 million that was supposed to go to Columbia and Barnard over the anti-Semitic conduct of the students. I think that's incredibly great. But when I was at Columbia, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt in 1933, when he comes into office, and by then they had...
you were not there in 1933.
No, I wasn't there.
All right.
But what happened was the change of authority from one president to another took place in March. So he comes in on March 4th, 1933. That was the last year that happened. They moved it back to January
right.
back to January 20th later on. And he lined up all these things that he was going to do. You know, we're still sort of in the Depression. We've got all these things happen. Every day he had something going on from March 4th. I mean, it was like a month and a half. Donald Trump comes in on January 20th. So he had less time to organize his stampede. but his stampede is still going. And here we are. We've passed March 4th. Today's March 8th. We are experiencing these quick decisions and action. And to do it, he didn't find, like you said, the holders on, the people who had expectations, the people whose cousin knew his cousin. He's going right at who can bring him the best results. And who am I to say that he could do any better than Elon Musk?
Yeah, smartest guy in the world, potentially, who knows? But we know he's the richest guy in the world. And if you listen to Elon Musk and you listen to Trump, number one, I think it's really glad that President Trump has a friend on his level, and I think they're kind of on the same frequency. That's really nice to see, a peer, if you will. I know there's a pretty big age gap, but it seems to me like they're peers. President Trump is obviously in charge, and Elon Musk is deferential. I saw a video, by the way, you've probably seen, I should say film, of John F. Kennedy with Werner von Braun inspecting the Apollo rockets that were still being designed in the early 1960s. Yeah, this is footage you can find, and it reminded me when I saw Donald Trump with Elon Musk at one of the launches of the SpaceX. It just seemed like the same dynamic, and you had those two great men, von Braun and Kennedy, getting us to the moon, and I think these two great men are going to get us to Mars, and there's a lot out there to be excited about.
Speaking of that, Greg, have you heard, someone told me that Trump said, I think it was on Thursday, that he is sending a rescue mission to the astronauts who are stuck. They were supposed to come down in February, and they haven't.
Yes, there's something to that. So the astronauts have been marooned up there since the summer.
Yeah.
They were supposed to be back in less than a month, I think. And when they hit 50 days, it was a bit of a, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? We don't have a rocket. The woman up there, the female astronaut, Sunny is her name, is getting sick. She's getting skinnier and skinnier. So Elon Musk in the summer floats, hey, I actually have the capacity to get them back. The word is that
Biden shut it down.
Right. That Joe Biden shut it down. At that point, we knew Elon Musk was kind of all in for Trump. Biden hates Elon Musk, hated him before all this stuff. In 2023, he was asking his Justice Department, look into Elon Musk. And we also have this basically confirmed, and this is a first, by one of the astronauts in orbit yesterday, said, I believe Elon Musk. This is true. I don't know all the details of the negotiations, but I believe Elon Musk and what he says. That came from an astronaut in orbit from the International Space Station. Politics, what an ugly thing, huh? You know, politics get in the way of that.
But wherever there are humans, it gets someplace, and now it's in outer space. It's kind of amazing, but you see that kind of fearlessness is what made our country. You know, how the West was won.
Whose kinds of which fearlessness are you referring to?
The fearlessness of people who went forward and believed in developing land and moving across the country and building a government and, you know, establishing a court system and all of those things that had objections to it and opposition to it at every turn. And yet we seem to have built a country that, for the most part, does extend rights to as many people as possible and opportunity to most people if they try hard enough.
Well, I hope we stay that way. One thing that really concerns me about our country and that spirit you just referred to, is it going to be lessened by marijuana, by drugs of any sort, and by entertainment? You know, these damn screens that we have, and I look at them all the time myself, but you know, my wife once said we're being entertained to death. And the Netflix and everything and the content and the TikTok and the Instagram, these things are addictive. I fear America, you know, kind of losing their soul to some of this content all the time. When is there time to think, contemplate, to pray? It's
amazing that you would say that, Greg, because I had this conversation with my wife about 2 days ago, and it had to do with the opposition to, you know, the major changes in a short period of time in the government and that kind of thing. And it was, and my point was that there are probably people who would have valid objection to it, but they're too busy watching videos. Or they're too busy sending messages back and forth. I'm not going to name any names, but there's a group of people who I know, and you know them too. They sit around and text each other all day. And all they have done is destroy my phone because I can't get any messages now.
Yeah.
Every time I'm getting a message, one of their names pops up about something. And the most rhetoric with the least amount of communication. In other words, somebody sees a headline and then they tell all the friends, and it turns out to be a rumor. It's not true.
Right. And they get mad about that, furious about that. Then something else happens. They move on. And that's part of why nothing remains long enough for us to think about for it to really kind of seep into the hard drive of our brain.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why Cuomo, he's the beneficiary of this stuff, because it's like people can't remember anything that happened. And, you know, they were snowed for a long time while he was in office. And by the way, I will say this for everybody, and people hate it when I say this. I mean, there are a lot of reasons to oppose Cuomo, a lot of reasons to hate Cuomo. But one thing I don't believe is I don't think he's a sexual predator. I don't think he harassed them to the extent that he should have been forced out of office. The COVID stuff, the $5 million book deal while he's still in office, totally repugnant to me. But if you read Tish James's Tish, like she's some friend of mine, Tish, if you read that Attorney General's report, it does not amount to much of anything. That thing in and of itself is a scandal, that document.
Well, I've known Andrew a long time, and I've known him in different environments, and I've even known him in, you know, we've gone out and had dinner and had a few drinks, you know, that kind of thing. I never heard him address women or act in a way that was inappropriate, other than, you know, like a woman might pass by and say hello to me and him, and then they go away. And he might have said something like, wow, she's beautiful. That's not an insult. And not only that, she's not even there. So I agree with you. I don't think he had that. I think sometimes with some people, and of course, I guess it would, you know, stand for governors, if you are by nature perhaps a little bit awkward, it could come across as more than it really is.
Is he awkward?
He can be at times. And, but, you know, I mean, other times I've found him to be very funny, but I'm just saying that I wanted to hear the smoking gun, and I don't think I ever heard it in that case.
Well, believe it or not, and this is in the report, sexual abuse survivor number 8, or whatever number, right? When he got a COVID test in public on a stage, right? And we all saw it. It was on live television. Right. The doctor comes over to him. It's a female doctor. She's in a lab coat. And goes, hello, doctor. You'll make that gown look good? Okay, tilt my head back. That make that gown look good was cited as an example of sexual harassment. It's in the report. That's how, to me, scandalous it is. Again, I have no regard for this guy. I think he's a narcissistic individual. I think he's a little bit psychopathic. I think he has serious problems. I tried to address this with him.
Other than that, he's a pretty good guy, right?
Well, I mean, he has no business in public life. He didn't atone for it. He didn't even apologize in any. What did he do over the past 4 years? Look, enough about him. I want to ask you about something else. How do you feel about the war in Ukraine? Very quickly, I'm sick of it. I want it over. And I can't say I'm too passionate about. I'm supposed to be on Ukraine's side, I know, but, I'm more on the side of peace. How do you feel about all this stuff?
I'm sick of it. I want it over. I think that the president may have a worldview here, which I guess I could tolerate, which is his biggest fear is not that he would necessarily lose a good relationship with Russia, but that China might have a better one, and that China might take Russia into places that the United States could not. And maybe that's the reason, but I just didn't think it was necessary for them to have that, Jerry Springer fight that was seen on national news when they really needed to be talking about stopping communism. And when I was a kid, anytime somebody said anything that was even mildly, generous to some of the nations behind the Iron Curtain, they were called a communist. Now there are people who are telling you they're communists, and we're still not doing anything about them.
Well, very interesting, Governor. I find ourselves in unexpected agreement on a lot of things.
Don't worry, we still have 40 minutes to go.
Okay. We'll be right back with From the Left and the Right on 77 WABC. Okay, we're back. Left versus right, right versus left on 77 WABC. And Governor Patterson, I know it's very casual here. It's very comfortable. And it's fascinating, though. People often let their guard down on a podcast. And once a week, at least, they're trying to cancel somebody for something that got said on a podcast. And I will say, I think America has become very silly in that respect. Now, let me put it to you this way. Like Nicole Wallace, who is a contemptible person on MSNBC in every possible way. and really, I mean, from her personal life to her public life to what she did during the Bush years, just terrible. So she said something, quite frankly, repugnant. I think about that 13-year-old boy, and I just don't watch it. I saw the highlights. What I'm trying to say is this. There's often somebody said something outrageous, they should be fired. Somebody said something stupid, we need to boycott them. I mean, I don't know. I expect lunatic people to say lunatic things on lunatic networks. I'm okay with that in a way. You know what I mean? And when everybody gets ginned up, then again, they get ginned up for 30 seconds like the friends you text with, and then they move on to something else. America has become so much a country more about what you say than about what you do. And, if the devil shows up, I am sure the devil is going to say all the right things and do all the horrible things. Human beings often say the wrong thing. And the idea that we're canceling people left and right. And however, I am going to say Nicole Wallace is very cancelable right now. This possibly is one of those times where you get fired. But I think we're a little bit too uptight in many respects.
Now, what did she actually say? I didn't.
She said the 13-year-old boy that nobody stood up for, sweet kid, he's going to be a cop. That's great. I guess he figured that out already. If he does become a cop, I hope he doesn't become one of the Capitol Police officers who had to fend off MAGA insurrectionists, and I certainly hope he's not one of the police officers who winds up killing themselves because of what happened on January 6th because of Trump.
See, that's an example of someone using a situation and twisting it into things they wanted to say anyway. See, she could have talked about those other issues and left the boy out. He's a 13-year-old boy. He doesn't know what he's going to be when he grows up, and neither do his parents, and certainly less than she would know. And I think that's when the media hits a place where I hear you about the vileness of it, that this was just taking a situation and transposing it is really the word I'm looking for into your rant that you were going to make anyway.
So here's something that I think we might have some differences of opinion over. Crime. Crime has exploded all over the place. It's been, in some sense, normalized. The police have been neutered in many respects. Culturally, very difficult for them to respond. I would say for about at least 10 years now, you can't trust numbers from the police department about crime. It's become so politicized. Crime is a bigger problem than ever before. The government, well, possibly not ever before, but certainly in the past 20 years, it's horrendous. And the government says, we're doing a good job. The government is doing a good job. Just ask the government. The city is out of control. So many communities across the country are out of control. I know it. I believe you know it. And, well, homicides are down. Number one, they do play games with those numbers. And number two, you know what? I don't really care about homicides. I don't. I've never seen anybody murdered in my life. but I have seen harassment, I have seen assault, I have seen robberies, and those are the crimes that actually people I think are most
Right.
have to deal with, not homicides. And when they point to homicide, that's not the indicator. That's not the overall indicator. But what do you think?
I remember in the late 80s into the 90s, these were the worst crime statistics I believe the city ever had. And I remember at the time, I was in my 30s, I guess, and I didn't change any of my routes. I didn't change anything because I got the feeling this was an issue of drugs and drug dealing and retaliation and gang fighting against each other. That if you basically just minded your own business, you'd be okay. For some reason now, and really for the past couple of years, I don't feel that way anymore. In other words, it just seems like anything could happen at any moment to anybody. It could be random. You didn't have that many random crimes back. I mean, you had people robbed, and the people who got robbed were selected randomly. But I'm talking about people who randomly attack people and didn't have any reason for it. Even when, somebody looked at you the wrong way and you attacked them, at least there was not a good reason, but there was a motivating reason. So what I'm saying about this is, I was in a rather small incident, as you know, a few months ago. But what really annoyed me was 2 of the participants were given an opportunity to redeem themselves by the court. I thought part of the redemption would be that they would talk to the people who they attacked. So my wife called the DA's office to ask if that was going to happen. They said, no, if they came to see you, that would be like admitting guilt. Now, that is about the stupidest, most inane, inept statement I think I've heard out of anybody. And I'm glad I don't know who it is, because I would take their name and publicize it. Because, if you're going to have diversion and you're diverting someone away from attacking people, what would be the best place to start? Talking to the people they were involved with. So I have to say you've run the table on that one, Greg.
Well, Governor Patterson, it's really a privilege sitting with you and discussing the issues of our time and what's hot and what's not. And you're an amazing man. You're a living legend in many respects. And I really appreciate spending time with you. And thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. I'll try to move a little more to the left next time.
That's okay. From the left versus the right, this is Greg Kelly for 77 WABC.